And now for your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 378 of This Old Marketing for Friday, June 2nd, 2023. And with me, as always, as he always is, my pal, my colleague, and a guy who's definitely doesn't have a debt ceiling, Mr. Joe Polizzi. Get in here, Joe. There he is.
Yay! Hey, is it done? Is the debt ceiling issue
Well, as we record this, the House has passed it, and it goes on to the Senate, which I can't imagine that there will be any problems in the Senate. So
there's never problems in the Senate. I'm sure.
No, well,
I'm sure it's going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll be fine.
I did not realize that we are the only country in the world that has this thing, that actually has a thing like you need approval to pay your bills. I didn't know that.
You know what's so crazy is there was a fascinating, the best primer I've heard on this whole thing came out of NPR. The guy, Kai Ryssdal show.
Okay.
Money Matters, I think it's called. And he basically had on all of the people from the head of the U.S. Mint to Treasury, former Treasury personnel and all of that. And they explained it. And it was the best explanation I've heard so far, because they talked about how it's not even really debt. Right. It's not, what we're talking about here is because we're not borrowing from somebody. It's not like we're borrowing from a bank, or we're actually, it's permission to print money, basically.
Yeah, it's permission to add a line to the ledger is basically what it does.
That's right.
Correct.
And add and literally they talked about this, $1 trillion coin, right? They would make a coin. The Mint would actually make and they actually do this apparently. They actually make a coin, and there's been all sorts of brainstorming and fun sort of, ideation over what it should be, like what a $1 trillion coin would look like and be physically. And because what they used to do is print up, platinum coins, right? That would equate to the debt ceiling. But now as we get into sort of, bumping it up by $1 trillion or $2 trillion, you have to come up with sort of more imaginative ways to make a coin that is actually worth that much.
Like maybe chocolate.
Yeah. Well, they actually talked about making a giant paper mache.
You might as well, right? Because it's all make believe.
That's exactly it.
It's so silly, the whole thing, because they literally can go to this ledger, but coins are not, and say, oh, plus 1 trillion, minus 1 trillion. Take a little bit off. Oh, we want to give more for tax cuts. We want to go send checks out. Oh, let's just add a little bit more and add to it.
That's it. That's all it is. They're just getting permission to basically, and they don't really even need, with the 14th Amendment, they don't really even need permission, right? There was a lot of talk this time about invoking the 14th Amendment, which is ostensibly when the founding fathers went, yeah, this shouldn't be a problem. This is not going to be a problem. We should just do this, right? And it's only been within the last, I think they were talking about 40 years or so, 40 or 50 years, that it's become like a thing that everybody starts to debate. It's sort of, it's everybody trying to renegotiate whatever budget was passed the previous year. And it's like, yeah, that's not the way things work, right? And it's just it's just craziness. It's just our government silliness at work.
It's so. I read an article in the New York Times about it today, and how Biden had to, got some things, and of course had to give other things up. But the one thing that both parties are totally in lockstep about is making sure we don't lower defense spending. And if there's one thing that really needs to be cut, it's defense. I mean, it is the highest line by far about our spending.
Right. It's not even close, right? Yeah, it's not even.
Here's the thing. Don't you think you get in a room with some people and say, you know what, we probably can cut a little bit there. It's 40% of our budget. Maybe that's where we should cut. I don't know. I'm not.
Well, no, it's. I mean, it's a great point.
I'm just saying.
Even just
that's where you would go first for any business. For any business, the first thing you do is say, what is our largest line of
Which is
cost?
the largest expense, exactly.
The largest expense, and maybe we look there first. And because you ask the question, why is it so large?
Right.
Well, I think is anybody asking? I don't know. I'm like,
it's well. I mean, just
as you can tell. Look, I'm all flushed.
For a minute.
I'm red in the face.
Yeah.
I told you before the show, I look like I've been under a heat lamp for days.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I'm starting to sweat now. This is really getting to me personally. On another note, here's the most important thing of the week.
Yeah.
Did you watch the season finale for Ted Lasso?
No. And shut up. I don't want any spoilers. It's tonight. I'm watching it tonight. Yeah. I have not seen the season finale of Succession, nor have I seen the season finale of Ted Lasso yet. We got to the last episode. Then I had a client dinner last night and couldn't watch it, and I promised my wife. My wife has promised
put clients ahead of Ted Lasso. That's despicable.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Do you have any morals, sir?
Yeah, I didn't get home till late, so we couldn't watch it last night. But tonight is the night we're gonna watch it. But I've heard they stick. I've heard because I don't know this way, but this season has been okay. Right, of the 3 seasons, this one was sort of just okay. But as the season progressed, it got better and better and better. And the last episode, which is of course the penultimate, as it were, I loved it. I love the way it ended. I love the way, and I was like, oh, I'm so excited for that. And I've heard that they stick the landing. So I'm curious.
They brought it. Yeah, they brought it together. I've watched it twice. So just to see what I missed in the other one. So it's funny. I was just on another event right before this one, and the event took place in the UK, and I was asking them how big of a deal is Ted Lasso, and one said not big at all, no big, and the other one said, oh my God, it's crazy. So I got total mixed messaging about how big it is.
I've heard that. I've heard the former
here. Yeah,
I've heard the former. I've heard that in the UK it's not a big deal. It's not. They don't really understand it. But that's, I have to say, and to all my British friends, I apologize in advance for this comment. But my mother and my whole side of the family's from there, so I can come to it honestly.
Okay,
that a lot of that is the very dark and cynical way of British humor, and so that sort of a show about that is infinitely positive and infinitely sort of non-cynical, I can see why that wouldn't work there.
Maybe.
I mean, if you look, even if you look at sort of the British version of The Office versus the American version of The Office,
it's cringy. I can't even. The difference in humor. It's too cringy.
It's way too cringy and dark. Yeah, it's way too cringy and dark for me.
Just if Ted Lasso was a content marketing effort for the sport of soccer, growing in the United States, I think that you could show, and you'll be able to, if you look back on this, that starting with Ted Lasso, that the interest in football has grown immensely and will kick off a point, I think, in the next, and it has been growing, but I think this is really something that's going to boost to a new plateau. I know so many more people in the United States that are talking about the Premier League and what's going on with football in that country because of Ted Lasso and understanding who those teams are, and
it's
West Ham,
it has
Arsenal,
to have been a
Manchester
huge
City.
boost for soccer. Yeah,
it's incredible, and I'm one of them because I mean, I was sort of following Arsenal in 2017-18, but now I actually know what offsides is. Like I can actually, you can see the game coming together. It takes a long time. You got to really want it to, and I know you're a big national football. You're a big NFL fan, and I am too. And I'm probably still more of an NFL fan, but it's quickly gone into probably my second favorite thing to watch would be NFL, and then Premier League football is probably number 2. And it used to be baseball, but
well, I mean, getting on a rant about baseball, where baseball is these days.
I'm more into baseball. I'm more into baseball this year because my son works for the Cleveland Guardians.
Oh, right. Of course. Team. Yes. Yeah.
So we're sort of sharing it together. There was a 20-year period where none of my kids were interested in my first love, and that was always Major League Baseball. And now it finally happened. So sometimes you don't get what you want as a as a parent until
You
much later.
can't always get what you want.
So anyways, we have a show, do we?
Yes, we do have a show. We have a lovely
show. Did you prepare a show this week, Robert?
I did prepare a show for us this week to talk about and have wonderful things. And we're going to start with, well, is it our extinction moment, right? So it felt like the podcast was a great time to talk about human extinction, especially as we talk about the debt ceiling. So yes, there's a new policy out, I guess you could say, signed by another group of AI experts who says we may be on the cusp or the precipice, as it were, of destroying humanity. Then we'll also talk about how, however, it might just save AI, that is, save advertising, and how WPP and Nvidia, and by the way, if you didn't add Nvidia to your stock portfolio over the last couple of weeks, shame on you, because
somebody I know did. Somebody I know had Nvidia as their stock pick of the year.
Saved my portfolio, I will tell you that. Yeah.
Oh my God, I don't know how you came up with that one, because usually you don't pick very well. So I was surprised.
True. I'm not a great stock picker.
You really got that. You got that one correct.
Yeah, okay, I did nail that one.
You were going through the agenda. Yeah.
Exactly. Then we'll talk about Twitter. Of course, we will talk about Twitter. Don't know that it's really a musky scent sort of segment, but we will talk about Twitter and how it has withdrawn from the European Union's practice on disinformation and what that might mean, as well as the fact that it looks like they're now kind of outsourcing, or at least trying to outsource, their ad sales into an online marketplace. And shocking absolutely nobody, the revenue seems to have fallen to a third of what it was as Fidelity starts to mark down their investment. That is just crazy. And then we'll end up, if we've got time, to talk a little bit about purpose-driven marketing and where it sits as we enter Pride Month and all of the wonderful things that happened during June here, and talk about where we stand with this. The Wall Street Journal has an interesting take on what's going on with Target and with Bud Light and a number of other brands, and where we might be kind of stuck in the middle. Then we'll get to our rants and rave sections, of course, where Joe will talk a little bit about not Formula One. It's Indianapolis 500. Same diff. Oh, not so much. Oh dear. I just pissed off every racing fan out there. It's the Indianapolis 500 and perhaps the winner of that and how they did something a little different. And then, of course, I will take over with my commentary, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Peloton. And they've just relaunched their new brand, and I'll let you guess. It's just a tease about what I'm going to say about Peloton.
Is it also on your stock picking list, Peloton?
No. Other than maybe
kind of went the other direction with that one.
I don't want to spoil it too much about where I am on Peloton,
okay.
But let's just say that they're not part of the
45 minutes for your statement on that. All right,
that's right.
Good, that's awesome.
Right. All right, well, let's get to the show then, shall we? And talk a little bit about how the AI could destroy humanity, says AI's creators. And, it's a fascinating thing when we start looking at this. This comes to us courtesy of the Morning Brew. And basically it opens up by saying, tell the world AI may cause human civilization to collapse without going over Twitter's character limit. I love that opening. That's just such a great lead in. That's what a bunch of celebrity AI experts did when they signed a 22-word statement warning about the existential risks of the technology that was published by the nonprofit Center for AI Safety yesterday. Those 22 ominous words: mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. All right. Fantastic.
That's it. That's all they said.
That's the statement in its entirety. Yeah, that's right. Many of the signatories comparing AI to the A-bomb are the same folks who were foundational in creating the tech. Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis, as well as superstar AI researcher Jeffrey Hinton and Stuart Russell were among the big names who endorsed the message. I didn't see Elon's name on there, which is fascinating. But anyway, the article goes on to talk about that intelligent machines could supercharge progress in virtually all human endeavors, from drug discovery to space exploration. Some experts, however, worry that they might also cause humans to go the way of the Hartford Whalers. Wow, I love this writer. This is fantastic.
The Hartford.
I mean, that is some obscure reference. That is obscure right there. That is just awesome obscurity. Anyway, the article goes on to talk a little bit, not for very much longer, about what those risks may actually be. So what is your take on this, my friend? What do you think? Are we on the cusp of killing ourselves like the dinosaurs?
Well, dinosaurs is a good reference, because when I read this, I thought of, okay, it's like the creators of Jurassic Park complaining that Jurassic Park was developed in the first place and warning everybody about it. I go, why does that always have to be the case? Oh, okay, well, hey, we created all this stuff. Now watch out, be careful.
Right.
Right. I don't know. It seems a little bit silly to me. My take on we're seeing a lot of this warning, with these warnings go on. My take is this. I wanted to get your opinion. I think that you're going to see this big bubble up of everybody warning about this stuff, but then it's going to be ignored for a while, kind of like the climate issue. And we're going to back shelf this thing. And we're just going to let it fester and back shelf it until about 20 years where we'll all be dead basically, because of it. I think that's where that's what I think is going to happen. It's like, oh, nothing. It's fine. Everything's fine. Deep fakes, all this stuff. We're going to see a ton in the election process happen. It's going to be a little bit scary. You're going to just get more and more questioning about what truth is, because nobody's going to know.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we're going to be like, oh, well, what is reality? And we can't put it back. I don't know if you can put it back into the bottle at this point. Can you?
Oh, you certainly can't. Yeah, there's you're not putting this genie back in the bottle for sure. Yeah. I think
I was going to say, and then I want to get your take. It said something about what's the part in this article where they talk about the shared values? Something about, here it is. These researchers, this is from the article you just read. These researchers are concerned about a future in which an AI that outperforms humans in various domains but doesn't share their values is prone to catastrophic accidents or misuse. I don't know if the values of AI are going to be any worse than human.
They're precisely the values of the humans that create it, right? I mean, so you can either and I've read some fascinating articles on this. I've been going down a rabbit hole with all the AI safety and listening, and I read the one of the signers of this thing, Eliezer. I always forget his last name. Eliezer, basically Eliezer Yudkowsky. I read his book. I've read multiples of his books, and he's the one that's really out there doing lots of interviews and podcasts and talking about. He's the one who literally said this was an extinction event. Like this is and basically said it was inevitable, right? That it was inevitable that we were going to do this. And so I've read all those and listened to all those. And what seems to be the concern is that if we reach a point of AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, where this is like, light years beyond, chat GPT and what we've got today, but true artificial intelligence where you've got where you've got AI that has goals that may not match, their method of achieving those goals may not match the values that we actually imbue in it. In other words, and this is the classic paperclip problem, right? Where you tell it to go make it a world full of paperclips, and the AI make a decision that says, the way I make a world full of paperclips is to kill all the humans, right? Basically because they're just in the way. And so I listen to that and I go,
it's war games. It's basically war games.
It's war games. It's exactly it.
It's like, I want a world without war. So we're going to get rid of all the human beings and war will cease to exist.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. And it's such a great analogy too, because that's exactly what it is. Because if for anybody who saw the movie, as the AI is going crazy, the general yells at the creator of the AI and says, why don't you just unplug the machine? And the creator says, well, that the machine would actually read unplugging it as an act of war, and therefore it would launch all the missiles, right? So so that's the fear, right?
Yeah.
Is something that could spread and or become ubiquitous to such an extent that it's like that movie Lucy, right, where her ability to sort of control all electronics becomes, because everything's networked together, and so there's no single point of failure there, so you can't just unplug it. So I hear that, and I think it's a valid concern, but I read this kind of statement. And again, it comes back to, we talked about this when that other letter came out. I think the communication here isn't productive. in my mind, right? The idea of putting in fear and giving it, and couching it in this way of a fearful message is ultimate. I know their intent is to get somebody to do something about it, right? Get governments to create something, get NATO to create something, get world governments to actually pay attention and do something here, because they want to be regulated, right? These are earnest people wanting to be regulated and have this technology not end up in dark people's hands. And so I worry about the communication here, because it had, to your point, it didn't work with climate change and hasn't worked with climate change. And so we haven't learned yet, right? That it's not, talking about world destruction in this way doesn't motivate people. It just doesn't motivate people to act.
So what?
They all
okay.
say,
so what should they?
What
What should they have done?
Hyperbole.
What should they have done?
I think they need to put in the. So we talked about this again a little bit when the letter came out. I think they should actually take action, right? In other words, start acting. In other words, build in the Davos-like event where they go and they put out not just a 22-word statement, but actually a code of ethics. And, not unlike, it's so funny because I was just reading about do you remember the hole in the ozone that we used to talk about in the 80s and 90s and now is gone and nobody talks about? Well, what we don't talk about was the scientists got together, there was the Montreal Accords, and basically everybody went, CFCs are not good. Let's stop doing that. They dropped by 99%, and thus we saved the hole in the ozone. A similar thing needs to happen here, where these scientists, AI experts need to take action. Like, get out in front of this. They need to be the ones to get out in front of this and actually take action and get government involved, because government's not going to lead this. I just don't think at least our government is not going to lead this. So actually not just issuing 22-word tweets, but actually taking action and building an event and actually issuing things like ethics and codes and, all those kinds of things would be the ideal in my mind.
That sounds difficult. That sounds more difficult than 22 words. I think that's
Totally.
why the 22 words.
That's exactly right.
You could just put out your mission statement,
and it sounds like somebody has to pay for it, and it sounds like it's going to be, there's going to be money involved, and there's going to be effort.
I'm under the assumption that there was a conversation that was had that says, hey, let's put this out into the world and see what happens, and not do anything more, and not necessarily direct.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that happens a lot in businesses. Look at your corporations. So, I mean, I've been in a couple of companies where they said, here's the big, hairy, audacious goal. Here's what now all of you departments, you figure out what that means for you. There's some belief that that's the better way to go. I don't know if they're necessarily giving direction to do that, but that's how I read it. It's like, okay, we're putting this out there. We're concerned. Now there's 1,000 really smart organizations right now that can take that and do something with it. Like our friend Paul Raitzer has the Marketing AI Conference and Marketing AI Institute, and really taking this, and Paul and his team are doing a really good job of trying to bring some clarity with the marketing function specifically with this. So maybe if more people do that, maybe we've got something.
And I could see someone, so I understand the concern. The immediate concern from private industry is that the world or the audience or consumers or whoever we're talking about here will see that as, through a cynical lens, and see that, these business leaders are getting together and issuing these things because it's in their self-interest to do so. And it's like, that's kind of got to be the risk, right? I believe that has to be an acceptable risk, that they may not, what's the classic Batman, right? You stay around long enough and you'll a hero stays around long enough to become the villain or whatever it is. I think they have to be willing to be seen through that eye and risk their perception in the marketplace in order to get people to act responsibly, because I think that's going to be the real key here. And maybe it is going to take somebody like, Paul and Marketing AI to sort of start issuing proactively, not just covering it, but actually starting to say, hey, we're helping to direct this as well.
I think that's what has to happen. A call to arms for each particular industry. And I think that's right. And you're seeing that, So maybe this will be a good thing. So
Yeah.
all right.
Well, and it segues nicely into a story that, because here's the other end of that barbell, which of course is what we're seeing in advertising, right? And just announced this week was WPP, the giant holding company, of course, of advertising agencies, and they announced that they're building an AI-fueled, what they called anyway, an AI-fueled content engine with Nvidia. This also coming to us courtesy of Marketing Brew, and the article opens up by saying WPP is breaking further into the AI game. The holding company inked a partnership with chipmaker Nvidia to build a quote-unquote content engine that can leverage AI for clients by churning out large volume of ads, because everybody needs that, right?
We
That.
need more ads. That's
We need
why
more ads.
that's why
And more
AI was
iterations of
created
ads.
for
The engine,
better
which will
creation,
employ
more seamless
NVIDIA's
creation of ads.
Omniverse cloud technology, connects various 3D tools, and it'll be able to use content from companies like Getty Images and Adobe. According to the Financial Times, it will let WPP use AI to create minutes campaigns that would have previously taken weeks. For instance, a car could be placed in a desert or rainy street with the car adapting to its surroundings, glistening wet or reflecting glare in processes that would have taken days using a traditional green screen or real-life filming, said the Financial Times. So the article goes on to basically talk about how Publicis has also done this. Stagwell has also done this, and a number of agencies are certainly looking at this. This to me is, I would love to get your take on this, what you think certainly from a media company or publisher's perspective, but I will tell you from a marketing and an agency perspective, this is a whole big bucket of nothing. I mean, this is,
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't even, I mean, the fact that they actually got like, wow, this is like a big thing. Like, really?
Well, maybe we shouldn't even have covered it, because it's a
No, I think it's worth covering.
glorified press release.
It is.
So yeah. So here's my take. You know more about this than I do. My first take is this is already being done with a lot of organizations already. Okay, so great. Nvidia, who had a 27% increase in their stock last week, all this demand for AI, they're coming out with this other thing. We're just keeping that momentum going. That's great. Okay, fine. All good. But why focus it on advertising if you're going to do it? Like,
right.
Maybe it's because the ad market is still the largest market. Paid media is still, again, I say it all the time, is the sun. Content marketing is Pluto. It's not even a planet. I have to say that every time. I'm going to trademark that statement. Really, when I look at this, I'm like, wow, this will make content. This has an impact on the content creation process, and for a long, long time, and will continue to evolve. This is really interesting to me. No, they don't do that. They just focus it on commercial content, specifically advertising, specifically the 30 or 60-second spot. I'm like, that is not interesting at all to me. Like, why even go that direction? But yeah, I think you're right. It's just, let's go after the money, because
well, it's an exciting headline. I mean, what's not covered here, I mean, just the most basics, right? If you just stop for a second and go, oh, okay, what this means is that you, instead of that one version of that 30-second spot, you could create 100 versions of that 30-second spot.
So more ads.
My question, you could create a whole portfolio of the car in the rain, the car in the desert, the car, in green, the car in blue, the car in green and blue in the desert, and then it starts to rain. You could create all these iterations. Why? And where are you going to put all those things? Because it's not like you can dynamically serve all of this up, in personalized ways across TVs and all these kinds of, I mean, how are you going to distribute this? Why is the question becomes, why would you do this? And other than being able to say you can, right. And that to me is you look at this and you go, okay, this is a solution looking for a problem, to be honest. And so to your point, trading it out for interesting content and how we might create interesting content using this, and then maybe multi-purpose it for different channels or something like that. I can totally get. Maybe
too many cooks in the kitchen is what it creates. It's very similar to when you would have a creative director would put together a layout for a magazine, and they would come in, and then you would get some publisher that would say, change that color to that color, do this to that, do what, has no idea, but just coming in because what it was with that person's personal preferences. And then the creative director's just deflated. They're like, oh man, we really had a vision for this thing. This is why we made all these decisions. And you get somebody that's coming in now can just change it on a whim. Right. Let's do all the things. Now, so that's what I don't like about it. What I do like about it is the fact that if you are testing ads, you can quickly test ads and see what resonates and say, oh, is it the car when it's raining out? Is it sunny? Is it in the desert? All those things. And you can quickly test those to see which ones resonate more. So that is interesting to me. And you don't have to spend a lot of money to do it.
Well, that's so yes, that's absolutely true. Although that's happening today. Like that's nothing new. They do different versions of ads, and so, you might argue that you can do bigger A/B tests, bigger differences, to say, okay, yes, we want a car in the rain versus a car in the desert. We want to test those two things to people in Arizona to see which one resonates more. But really, that's just saying, hey, we're going to create all these iterations and then test all those iterations, instead of the proper way to test is to say, what is it that we really want to test? Like, what are we really thinking about testing? In other words, you can test by throwing 100 pieces of spaghetti against the wall and seeing which one sticks. Okay, great. And maybe now with this AI engine, it doesn't cost as much to do that. Although we still haven't solved, by the way, the testing and distribution problem that is going to exist at least for some time. But then the question is, but you're not really making a hypothesis at that point. You're just seeing what sticks. And maybe it sticks because on that particular day, it happened to be raining and blah, blah, blah. There's so many different things. And so you're not really getting long-term value out of that. You're getting sort of this, arbitrage sort of testing, dynamic idea here. And I just don't see it happening. I don't see the reality of that being terribly useful.
I don't know. I could see it. If you take the next step and these iterations are made automatically, and there's thousands of data points. So right now you're right. This testing is that somebody might say, I'm going to create 25 different variations based on these things. Here's the hypothesis. We're going to put those out. We're going to test them and we're going to get the data back. Well, you don't need to do that anymore. You could put out one. Here's the standard, and then the generative AI kicks in and changes all of that depending on this data, and it could create a whole different ad the end based on and it resonates most with this group of people in these occupations in this location, and you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming.
That's a fair point. That
I could see happening, and you could get that information. It's almost like I was at Andy Crestodina's conference last year, and there was somebody that asked a question about, I really want customer feedback on this issue. And he says, oh, good. He goes, types in the thing. He says, what do we want to test? Goes to the site, tests it, throws it out there. And in 5 minutes gets 1,000 people to give their opinion on it. Yeah. I mean, so it's amazing. So that on, times 10 is possible from, a content feedback mechanism. So I don't know.
That's a fair point. What I hadn't really thought about there is it's funny. I've been getting briefings from a lot of the AI companies. We're in the process of writing a position paper on generative AI companies and where they are and what they're doing and which ones are, sort of stack ranked, not necessarily, the best versus the worst, but rather sort of like which ones are offering which kinds of features. And the most interesting feature, and I won't say the name of the company just yet, but the most interesting feature I've seen from one of the generative AI sort of marketing companies is the automation of workflow. The automation of workflow, where it's basically content comes in, it goes in immediately into your HubSpot or your CRM or whatever it is, and basically AI then takes it, creates an original response to that query, and then basically lets you approve it before you send it. And then if you send it, it automatically then creates the drip campaign that will ultimately follow from that, right? So it creates the 4 other emails contextual to that response to basically say, this over the next 5 to 7, weeks or days or whatever it is, it will send these emails, and you go yes, and so it automatically creates that, templatizes it, put it into a workflow, and then you go, oh great, and then you can start iterating based on that. So it's, that automated workflow is truly pretty amazing. In other words, the AI is actually building workflow for you, and that's a cool thing. That's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, and that's where marketing folks that are scared about losing their jobs, that's where the jobs are going to go. Are you involved in that little process of moving from one step to another in that sort of scenario? Yeah, you're not going to have a job. You're just not.
Yeah, that's right.
That's do something else.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's exactly right. If that's all you do, right? If that's all you do, that's where you. Yeah, if that's the only thing you do, then you need to think about adding other things to your to-do list.
There was a guy that sent me a note the other day and said, "Do you think I'll be a magazine like chief prompt writer?"
Well, it's already happening. I will tell you, it's
just part. It just becomes part of the job. It's not going to be like, hey, this is I'm a prompt writer. You're just gonna have to do it.
I will tell you, here's the thing. This is I've always had the problem with sort of the prompt engineer as being sort of the new super cool marketing job. The prompt engineer is the DAT tape of jobs. I mean, it's not going to last very long, because here's the thing. Some of the demos I'm seeing, they're already building interfaces to say, use AI to write better prompts. In other words, I want to write a prompt, and I've seen a demo of this. It's like, I want to prompt an awesome photograph of someone, and basically build it in so that it looks computer generated and blah. You basically just type it in like you would, whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
And then it comes back with, here's the prompt you should use, basically. So it's already happening. Like prompts are going to become easier, and prompts are already commoditized, I would argue. So having prompt engineers, I mean, it's literally going to be like, knowing HTML in 2008 or 2009, where you just don't need to know.
It was
HTML
good for a short period of time. It was really, really helpful. Not so much anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. I took the test. I took the HTML test back in 1997.
Oh, hey, I created a website.
I was a certified webmaster. How about that?
I created a website that when you moved your cursor around, little googly eyes followed the cursor.
There you go. That's
I was pretty impressed.
You're fantastic. All right. Speaking of googly eyes, perfect segue. Speaking of little googly eyes following you around the internet, Elon Musk, he's taking Twitter out of the EU's disinformation code of practice. There's a couple of things that we're going to cover here. Maybe I'll just go through each of these stories very quickly here, and so we can have a discussion about where Twitter is. But this first article basically says Twitter has now withdrawn from the European Union's code of practice on online disinformation, per the bloc's internal market commissioner, Terry Breton. That's the most English name I've ever heard. In a tweet last night, which confirmed earlier reports of Twitter's impending exit from the EU code, Breton issued the social media platform with a blunt warning, telling Twitter it cannot hide from incoming legal liability in this area. Twitter leaves EU voluntary code of practices against disinformation, but the obligation remains. You can run, but you can't hide, Breton wrote, a reference to obligations the platform is legally required to comply with as a so-called very large online platform, or VLOP, as it's called, under the EU's Digital Services Act. And the article goes on to talk a little bit about some of the, where those things might end up. That, in combination with an article.
Wait, before you move on,
sure,
you got to read the next paragraph. Says a request for comment emailed to Twitter's press office returned an automated reply containing a poop emoji. It's just important to say this is what Elon is building. This is the culture that Elon is building right now. Automated replies with a poop emoji. Okay, you may go on.
I just had this
is a quality show here, so we got to.
It's absolutely like well, it segues beautifully actually into the other one, which is they're now sort of, as they've outsourced sort of PR and communications with poop emoji automation. They have now seemingly, says Digiday, gotten into outsourcing their monetization to ad technology. Twitter's beleaguered ads business is on a bit of a roll these days, says the article, with the appointment of a top media executive, Linda Yaccarino, as the new CEO.
You said that's how you did it last time. Yaccarino.
Yaccarino.
Heavy emphasis on the yak.
That name sounds like a
Yakarino.
Simpsons character to me. It's like Yakko.
No, it's more
Who's
like you get to the restaurant. It's like I'd like the Yakarino bolognese. I don't know.
The Yakarino with a little extra Parmesan, please.
Too heavy on the cheese last time. Let's just
Linda
I'm trying to watch my
Yakarino.
figure, so I'll just have
WNBC.
Yakarino light.
Anyway, even the largest media buyer, Group M, which had previously determined the platform to be high risk, has taken notice and tried to calm advertisers' concerns about the social network. Meanwhile, the ads team, despite encountering obstacles, are persevering. In fact, they recently struck a deal with an ad tech vendor that could help counteract the ongoing loss of ad revenue. Since May 13th, Twitter has been selling ad inventory through the mobile advertising marketplace InMobi. This exclusive arrangement is evident in Twitter's ads.txt file, which authorizes InMobi as a sole vendor of this purpose. Currently, this partnership is limited to one test market, according to an ad executive familiar with the situation. However, as is customary with such deals, the plan is to gradually expand into other areas. He's basically look like he's going to outsource all of it to be automated there and not hire a bunch of ad sales people. Linda Yakarino, who comes from the ad sales world, is seemingly maybe behind this or not. Anyway, we'll finish here and then have a discussion about Twitter's value, which apparently has fallen to a third of its purchase price. This coming from MediaPost, which is Twitter is now worth about $15 billion, or roughly a third of the $44 billion that Elon Musk and co-investors paid for it last October, according to a Fidelity investment. Fidelity was part of the group of outside investors that committed more than $316 million to the Twitter acquisition. This is the fourth time since the acquisition that Fidelity has marked down Twitter's estimated value. The Fidelity Blue Chip Growth Fund's stake in the social media platform, now under Musk X Holdings Corp., was valued at nearly $6.5 million as of April 28th, down from $7 million as of January 31st, and about $8.63 million as the end of November 22. Whew, that's some not good numbers. Basically, this is, I mean, what do we think about all of this together? I mean, is anybody bullish that Twitter's going to be able to pull out of this sort of death spiral here? Or is this just, I mean, are we just waiting for the inevitable to happen? I mean, what the heck's going to go on with Twitter?
So yeah, we've talked about this in bits and pieces. We don't know what Twitter's going to be. We don't know what the vision is. We do know that it's not going to be what it was, because they are outsourcing their advertising and all. I mean, you could look at it a bunch of different ways, like, oh, they feel like they have to, maybe they feel like they missed opportunity. But when I see any corporation say that they're outsourcing part of the company, that means it is not a primary strategy in the organization. That's exactly what that means. If you're outsourcing something, it means that something else is primary, and this thing that you're outsourcing means that you don't have to have proficient knowledge inside the organization, and you can outsource that. So what they're telling me is that Twitter is not going to be the Twitter. It's not going to be a media company. That's not the focus of it. Okay, so the question is, what is it? We know that it could be, it's valued anywhere from $0 to $15 billion because Fidelity says so. And of course, Fidelity would know. Yeah, I don't care about Fidelity or anything like this, because a company like that can they could write down the whole thing. They could have literally wiped out the whole thing and said, we're done with it. Well, I think
that's one of the reasons that they may be sandbagging on the value, is because what they're trying to do is not put the fear of God into people, and to say, if they wrote the whole thing down, people might, and it's a little touchy with banks these days, so it's like, I think we'll just take this slow. We're going to take this nice and slow and write it down over time.
Yeah. I think the biggest concern that I have is the first article you talked about, where Elon's given the big middle finger to any kind of organization that wants a semblance of truth in media.
Yeah.
He basically got rid of his moderation. He got rid of human beings in the moderate, like human beings that's their responsibility for. So he is going to outsource the moderation of this to the community. I've seen this movie. It's called Idiocracy, and you should all watch it, because that's exactly what's happening. We don't know what the truth is going to be. And so take the two concepts we're talking about in this show, in This Old Marketing. we've got this whole AI thing going crazy, and then you've got the other side where you've got one of the largest most influential media companies in the world that's basically saying it's not all that important that we look at disinformation sources and make sure that they're not on the platform.
Yeah.
And it might happen after a long, but it's going to stay up longer. It's going to get more traction. And once that happens, you won't be able to get rid of anybody that. So let's just take, for example, let's take somebody that does an AI deepfake, which is going to happen in the next couple months, and put it out there. Let's say it's a political candidate or a celebrity or whatever. And it's going to, and happens all the time, but it's taken down quickly. Well, it's going to go on Twitter and it's not going to be taken down. It's going to get a lot of fuel behind that, a lot of energy, and these things are going to go. And then a lot of people are going to think that that's truth. And we're going to get even more and more divisive. And a lot of our issue going on to the end of the world we talked about with AI is going to be because Elon Musk makes a decision like this. I'm sorry to put so much pressure on him, but for like it or not, Twitter is still fairly influential. There's a lot of your friends and my friends that have a big following that have their interests in the right place and are sharing out information that is relatively truthful. And you've got a whole bunch of people out there that are on the complete opposite side and will say whatever it takes to get attention. And that's what Twitter is going to become, a cesspool for that.
I can't even open my feed anymore. Like it's gotten to the point now where, and I've tried to tune it. And you know, I'm succeeding on my, you know, so the only place I go on Twitter anymore is the @ replies. Like I used to surf the feed. I used to go to the main feed and basically look and scroll through and, oh, interesting article. Oh, interesting point of view. Oh, interesting thread. Oh, you know, and sort of, you know, very much like you would LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram for various things, sort of just browse and scroll. I can't do it anymore because the first 30 stories are about, you know, either something about, you know, ooh, how these guys have owned the libs, or the libs have owned the right wing, or this is, you know, something's happened here, so Trump's going to jail, or Trump's not going to jail because he's so awesome. You know, it's like it's so vitriolic now, and just sort of posting pictures of and links to just awful things. It's like it's just useless. It's just useless anymore. And I can't. It's not like you can just unfollow, because it's basically all blue check people that are ostensibly not getting over the non-blue check people that I actually follow. So the people that I actually follow that
are you looking in people, this is in your feed. You're talking about in your feed.
Correct.
The people that you follow. So you're saying,
well, no, it's not people I follow. It's so you're getting a lot of people that you don't follow.
That's what I'm asking. So you set up, you're looking at your feed of people, and you're saying that there's content now in that channel that you did not agree to see.
Correct.
And you don't understand why they would do this. Why Elon would do this to you.
I understand why they would. I understand what the rationale behind it, the ridiculous and hopefully silly rationale behind doing it. So I understand it. I don't like it. But I understand why they're doing it, because, you know, arguments and disagreement on social media platforms is what builds engagement. I mean, that's the tried and true way to build engagement with, you know, you hate watch it, right? You hate watch the content, or, you know, I can't believe this person is saying this, right? So I'm going to
you said it last episode, tension.
Yeah, tension. It's all about
create the tension out there, and then you'll build an audience. You can build an audience because of that. Yeah.
That's exactly
good for Elon.
All right. Anything else to talk about here?
No, I have no idea what the guys I'm wondering what's the business. I don't know what the business model is. I honestly don't know. I thought it was going to be the payments platform. I don't see any strategic movement in that area at all.
I don't see any.
It definitely is not going to be a media company.
Much less strategic. Yeah,
it's definitely going to be media. So they've got about 1% of the people that signed up for the blue check. I signed up to check it out. I'm not necessarily seeing any additional benefits because of it.
I see zero additional benefit.
I'll probably
zero.
Yeah, I'll probably move off of that. I'm not sure. It's interesting, and it's interesting that we still pay so much attention, probably just because it's Elon, to a company.
Well, it's Twitter. I mean, it's something that we've had in our lives for, you know, almost whatever, 12 years or whatever.
No, more than
But
that. So I was on it in 07.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, there you
16
go.
years I've been on this platform.
Yeah.
Oh my
So,
God.
I mean,
16 years.
it
Almost
is.
as old
Yeah,
as
I
my
know,
kid.
right?
Jeez. Getting old.
All right. Well, speaking of that, things may be changing. Actually, things may be interesting changing. Our last story that we'll cover here before we get to rants and raves is from the Wall Street Journal, and the article is really interesting. And it says combative consumers change the marketing strategy for Target and Bud Light. In-person confrontations and the conservative focus on trans issues have disrupted the usual story of purpose-driven marketing in which brands take stands on social issues. The article opens up by saying many brands have long shrugged off criticism of their stands on social issues, but Target and Bud Light just proved that even huge corporations can be made to bend. Target this week stopped selling certain items from its Pride Month collection after a backlash from some customers that included in-store incidents, and Bud Light last month put on leave 2 marketing executives who oversaw a collaboration with a transgender influencer that drew criticism in real-life confrontations. And of course, we've talked about that on this show. Both brands, along with many other large consumer goods companies, have long supported LGBT rights, and their opponents in each case stirred outrage through social media, where previous corporate pressure campaigns have typically produced a lot of noise without significant results. But critics this time were focused on transgender issues, which have climbed into the top ranks of conservative social agendas, and they combined their social media messaging with tense in-person encounters that proved enough to disrupt the usual patterns of purpose-driven marketing, in which brands position themselves as forces for good. The strategy's biggest risks before this year were usually complaints by opponents of a given cause, or conversely, accusations of insufficient commitment to that cause. And the article then goes on to talk about both the Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch situation, as well as the Target situation, and what's actually happened here. Yeah, I have thoughts here, my friend. But what do you think about all of this, and in terms of what brands and marketing people should be doing when they think about these, purpose-driven campaigns?
Well, if you read this, this article is scary.
It's chilling
because it basically talks about how almost any brand, no matter your mission or not, if you go either direction, it becomes not only divisive, but it will hit the bottom line. I mean, the 26% decrease in sales from Bud Light over a 6-week period of time, ongoing, by the way, not ending, continues to deteriorate sales at Bud Light. That's scary for any chief marketing officer looking at that. So you might say, okay, well, you do one of two things. You either go all in on it and make one side upset, or you stay vanilla and maybe not make an impact or get attention at all. Yeah. I think the opportunity really plays for, of course I would say this, but I really do believe independent content creators are where the opportunity is at, because they can cover these issues. They can take stances on certain things. Smaller businesses can, without it creating a, national or international uproar with Bud Light or Target or whatever doing. I mean, if you look at the stuff about what happened to Target, I don't even understand. I'm like, this is not anything different that they've been doing. It's very much different than what Bud Light did. They did a separate campaign. It was sort of different than they've normally done. It was for sure a campaign. This is not a long-term initiative. Target, they've been doing Pride Month collection, I think, for a while. This is not like a new, so then they're getting this backlash. So I don't understand it. We become so divisive, and people are so loud on social media that actually make a difference in people's purchasing decisions, which I didn't really see coming. I always thought, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Everybody's going to get upset about something. But you're actually seeing this hit the bottom line. I don't know, like what would you say to a chief marketing officer in this type of a position that generally used to, or still does, celebrate that month of June, or any month, depending on what you're talking about?
Sure. I mean, I think you have to. Here's the thing. And we talked about this when I've gone, my emotional pendulum has swung back and forth on the whole Bud Light campaign. And I still, by the way, think the company, it was a self-inflicted wound for sure. This was totally self-inflicted. And I think for the most part, these are self-inflicted wounds for the brands themselves, because Yes, it's easier for smaller content creators and smaller brands and smaller businesses to do this because honestly, they don't have the reach or the audience or the need for the reach or the audience to basically reach the level of people caring as much, right? This is as much a pay attention to me, like, this is as much an attention grab for these people who are quote unquote boycotting than it is actually real anger and outrage, right? There's the outrage here is pretty performative at best, right? When I see celebrities and these right-wing politicians, and this is mostly very, very performative to get emotions at a high level where they can either it's in a weird way the dark side of content marketing, right? This is how I reach my audience and I get them wound up, is to get them super excited about something and much more excited than even I am, right? There's just sort of this faux outrage here. So from a brand perspective,
you're talking about like an InfoWars type of thing. You're really,
well, yeah, or just you think about it from a Kid Rock, right? And these country western singers who are out there saying, I'm going to boycott Bud Light, I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? It's just silly, which is just ridiculous because A, they don't drink Bud Light anyway, and B, they don't really care. But what they know is if they can use that issue to get everybody excited, they'll sell more records, right? They'll sell more tickets to their concert because people go, yeah, he's on my side. He's gonna stand up for what I do. And by the way, I'm from Texas, so I can do that, right?
You're gonna get hate mail for that. I'm just saying. You're going. Somebody's not.
You know
gonna
what?
Like that
I'm from Texas, and I've seen it personally. So bring it on. Bring it on. I was having a conversation about Texas last night. Anyway.
That's funny.
So the point being, for brands, the key is you can do it. You absolutely can do it, but it has to be well thought out and it has to be part of a marketing strategy, right? One of the things that I think is maybe goes missed here is I wonder if Bud Light and the marketing team that was ultimately thrown under the bus, I wonder if they actually thought or assumed or actually did the research to say, hey, actually, the trans community actually wants our beer. I mean, it seems to me a big brand mismatch to me. I mean, to me, the trans community would not be the first. Now, I'm assuming here, I haven't done the persona research and I haven't done anything about this, but so I don't know, to be clear. But my gut tells me that Bud Light and the trans community don't go together from a marketing standpoint. So even if the boycott hadn't been there, I'm not sure you were going to get a lot of successful bump and lift in sales in that community anyway. But having said that, if you're going to do it, you've got to commit to it, right? You've got to commit to that audience and you've got to commit to that idea because, we were talking in the pre-show, right? Now they're getting it from both sides, right? They're not getting any support from the LGBTQ community because they basically threw their marketing team under a bus and were wishy-washy about it. But they're also not getting any love from the sort of the right wing, who basically doesn't understand that they back down, right? And they basically, because they back down, now they're even more angry.
Well, in the Bud Light situation, that executive team made it worse. There's no doubt about it. If they would have stayed the course with it probably would have been much. I don't think those numbers would have been 26%. I think they got both sides just saying, well, forget that.
Yep.
They gave up on this whole thing, and I don't like that whole. And then now you're done.
Exactly
right.
Now you're suffering the consequences.
My whole thing is, and maybe it's not the independent content creators, but I think that when everybody is your audience, Bud Light is an everybody product.
That's right.
Target, for the most part today, is an everybody product. You're going to have problems taking positions. However, we talked about it's not necessarily the case with Disney. They've held the line on certain issues for a long time. Patagonia, same thing when it comes to climate. They've been very open, very liberal on. So I think that, again, if you're going to do this and you feel this is part of your overall strategy, to your point, they've got to commit to it. Second of all, you've got to add it to your mission. Like, this is what we stand for. Exactly. We believe this is part of our audience base.
That's the point. It can't be a campaign just to simply segment, look at segmentation, right? Yeah. This is the mistake that brands make, is they look at it as a simple audience demographic segmentation, and they'll say, we'll position the product or we'll position our campaign this way for this particular segment, because normally that would be okay, because nobody would care if it's positioned different from, men versus women versus South versus North versus East versus West versus, whatever the regional demographic segmentation would normally be in a market segmentation. purpose driven isn't just a market segmentation. It's a very emotional and very, sort of, and these days, sadly, unfortunately, a very divisive thing. So you have to lean into it, right? What was it? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I'm getting the timeline messed up here. When Bic came out with pens for girls, basically, and they were pink pens, and they rightly got humiliated for that. Like,
Sure.
what are you kidding me? Right? Putting out pink pens, because what they were doing was in a ham-fisted way saying, this is just a market segmentation and we're going to lean into the stereotypes here. And so the problem with this kind of thing is that you can't lean into those stereotypes, A, without making one side mad, and B, the other side mad. So you've got to really believe what it is you're doing at the business, at the business level. I mean, it goes back to, and I wrote a little bit about this and it was in, I heard this quote for the first time. It's a Peter Drucker quote that I've now written it out because I love it so much. It's just such a simple quote, but I love it. It's like, what he said was, in business, there are no marketing decisions. There are no finance decisions. There are no sales decisions. There are no customer service decisions. There are only business decisions. And so as you make those decisions, you have to basically commit to them across the board. You can't just have a marketing decision that isn't connected intimately to every other piece of the business. So you have to make that at a business level.
That's marketing. And,
exactly.
That's where Bud Light said they had a marketing campaign that was outside the overall business goals of Bud Light.
That's right.
That's what I think happened.
Yeah.
Who knows? Monday morning quarterback. We'll see.
All right. Well, that's enough about that. Enough about
We're
that.
done with that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Quickly, before we get to rants and raves, I just want to remind all of you that, hey, we're on YouTube now. We're on YouTube. We're on video, and we're on LinkedIn, and we're on all sorts of places where you can watch us.
We went from like nothing to like we're gonna be everywhere. Whether you like it or
going
not.
Everywhere. Like we're going big. We're going big, baby.
We're on MySpace.
You can also get us on thisoldmarketing.site, of course, where we put all the show notes and we put all the things. And of course, you can leave us messages. We'd love to get, by the way, some video questions, some video questions, some audio questions, or just questions, honestly, that we love to answer, that we can answer for you, our beloved audience. And of course, you can also get into the other things there, like subscribing to this podcast or following the podcast, as the kids say these days, and the other 300 and, of course, 70 million hours of two chuckleheads talking about the news that you might see in past episodes of This Old Marketing. And so we get it all for you. We want you to subscribe. We want you to give us story ideas. We want you to give us questions. So please do that. Won't you hashtag us up, by the way, on the Elon channel, Twitter, on This Old Marketing, or hashtag us on LinkedIn. We love the LinkedIn as well. Get us over there, or hashtag us on YouTube. I guess I don't even know if that works, but we'll do all.
Just go to thisoldmarketing.site, submit.
Yeah, just go to
that would be the easiest.
Just go to the website. Right?
That would
there.
Be
you go.
Yes.
Okay. So shall I go first, or will you go first?
Let me go first. Yeah. So this is, and I'm gonna we're gonna play this so you can see it. See if I got this right. But so
this is like multimedia now.
I know, right? Our friend Jesse Cole shared this. This is the first time I saw it. I'm not. I know you're not either. I'm not an Indy 500 fan. I did follow NASCAR for a while, but what I thought this was interesting because, of course, Jesse Cole with CEO of the Savannah Bananas is all about the fans first mentality. Saw this example, and I guess I don't know if it's pronounced Josef or Joseph Newgarden. I'm just going to call him Joe because that's a great name.
You go.
Won the Indy 500. And instead of doing the normal, let me play this here so you can see it. Instead of doing the normal, do the lap around the track, and he goes and he climbs through the fence, finds a little slit in the fence, and he goes out and he finds all the people that are cheering in the stands, and he just celebrates with the fans. And of course, now has become popular with that group of fans. This has been shared millions of times all over the world. And now there's a lot of Joey fans out there because of this. And I think this is a competitive advantage. There's a lot of people that wouldn't do this. So I just wanted to share this. I'll put this link in the show notes as well so people can share it. But just, you can go and check out an Indy 500, Newgarden, Joseph Newgarden, jumping the fence into the crowd and winning.
Nice.
And what's interesting is, too, and you know this, and there'll be more in the final episode of Ted Lasso as well. If you've seen what's happened throughout the 3 seasons, you've seen AFC Richmond do more and more things to get the fans involved. One thing, I'm not giving anything away, but the fans now are allowed to go to all their practices.
Yeah.
Nobody else is doing that in the Premier League, but they are doing this as part of this show. And it's just another reminder of what are some of the little things that we can do to get our fans, our super fans, more involved in the content that we're creating. Big opportunity for a lot of, and we just the last thing we talked about, there's a lot of people that are scared to do certain things. This is something that I think we can actually do, but we don't think about enough. So thanks to Jesse for pointing this out.
I love that. I love that. It's such a wonderful story. And again, very Ted Lasso like, right? It's just sort of, heartwarming and sort of not the typical thing that you would see happen in sports. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that. I think Ted Lasso is having quite the impact on sports generally, that you're starting to see some of those things trickle into, into those sort of
just showing the human side. And actually, I talked with my son a lot about Major League Baseball. I think that's why Major League Baseball is losing fans. They're not figuring that way out.
That's
and like
right.
now, I'm not saying that they have to do what the Savannah Bananas do. They don't have to go into the audience and sign autographs. They don't have to bring them up. They don't have to do musicals on the field like they do for Savannah Bananas. But there's something to it. There's something to it, like where what's one thing that you could do differently, where you could, there's this barrier right now that has just happened naturally over the past 60 years. Didn't used to be the case. If you look back, if you look back on like Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio, you could actually be a fan and get right up to them and talk to them back in the day. If you can't do that, you can't go and find Aaron Judge and get around their security right now. If you want to talk to Aaron Judge from the Yankees, it's almost impossible to do that.
Going to a baseball game these days is like a 3-hour math problem, right? I mean, it's just,
now it's 2 hours and 10 minutes. It's really
2 hour and 10 minute math problem.
The pitch clock is working.
Just data, right? Yeah. All you're doing is literally writing in a pad, all the math equations to figure out who's going to win at the end of the 2 hours and 10 minutes. It's like, okay.
I can tell you don't like baseball.
It's lost. It's become a 2-hour math problem. It literally just, there's no personality to it. There's no emotion in the game anymore. It's just literally just, okay, this guy's pitching and this is going to be happening. And
Rose.
Blah, blah, blah.
All right. Speaking of negative, why don't you go on to your,
this is actually not a negative. So the very quickly
I thought for
here,
sure it would be.
It's not going to be negative. No, it's a hopeful, it's ending on a hopeful note here.
Okay.
So the story that we'll link to is Peloton is basically launching yet again, for the article talks about like the 4th time, but it's been more than that, I think. Anyway, their latest brand revamp comes as revenue has dropped 22%. So Peloton is just can't figure out a way to pivot out of this. But here's my hope. I like Peloton as a brand. I've liked their efforts. I think, we've talked on this show before about how they launched the content studio. We've talked about how they've tried to make their instructors into a little bit of a celebrity row. We've talked about all of the interesting things that they've done in marketing, and they have done some really interesting things in marketing. So I applaud that. I stand up and applaud. It just hasn't seemed to work out. And what this article talks about here, and I'm actually really interested in, is all of these new brands. There is a new look and a new colors and stuff like that. But what they've done really to revitalize, quote unquote, the brand is add a bunch of new content. And it's all about the content that they're creating and the way that they're treating their content and, changing it up. They're adding in written instructions so that you can actually do it asynchronously with the instructors if you feel like it. They're trying to move from, watching these things only in your home to being able to watch them anywhere and do so they're really leaning into the content and media side of the business here as this brand refresh. And I applaud that again. I think it's another interesting move, and I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful because I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for them big time to to do well. They are not in my stock portfolio, as I talked about at the top of the show, but I'm really rooting for Peloton to do well because I like the company and I like the management team and I like the efforts and the interesting and creative things that they're doing. I hope this one works for them.
Who's more likely to buy Peloton, Nike or Apple?
Nike. Yeah. I would
It
see
would be a
Nike.
good.
I mean, it could be
would a
either.
good
I mean,
fit.
either of them would be good. Either of them would be good fits, and probably will happen at some point. The acquisition is just, I'm sure, literally just waiting it out. Like it's a waiting game now, but based on revenue and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nike or Apple. I think Apple would do the better job with it. Kind of like they did what they did with Beats.
Well, Peloton too is a little bit of a luxury brand.
Yeah,
I would
that's
call
right.
Apple a luxury brand, so I could
right.
see that happening. But
100%.
of course, the health content fits in really nicely with Nike.
It does.
And I would say Under Armour
tie it into
too,
the
but Under
watch, and they
Armour
could tie it
can't
into the
afford it.
phone, and they could tie it into iPads, and there's a lot of natural integrations there that would work really well. A Peloton with an iPad sort of in, so you don't have to have the screen. You can basically just insert your iPad and it just sort of works seamlessly. That would be a way to get the price down and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
A lot of potential. So,
all right. What do you got? What do you got this week?
Well, believe it or not, we're on our 4th straight week of amazing weather here in Northeast Ohio.
Nice.
And so I'm sure there will be more kayaking and hiking and all those types of things.
Beautiful.
So yeah, and we've been going to a lot of baseball games, which I know upsets you, but we've been doing that as well.
Doesn't upset me.
Trying to.
Doesn't upset me.
Exactly. What do you got going on?
Well, the weather here has been very nice as well. It's been cooler than normal, so we've been enjoying that and getting out and doing some hiking and doing some wonderful things that you can do in the springtime and early summer of Southern California. But from a work perspective, it's all about building some classes that we've got going on for some new educational efforts that I'm working on, and of course client work and all that kind of stuff. So it's all good. And work is the answer to that.
All right. Good deal.
All right, Mr. Well, all of you, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for hanging out this long in this wonderful place. And we will see you next week. And in the meantime, remember, it's your story to tell. Tell it well. We'll see you next week on This Old Marketing.